welcome back to another episode of Recharging the Human Battery here on AM 950 Radio. Dr. Cinecropy is taking a much-needed vacation this week, so it's just me, nurse practitioner Mandi Dickey, filling in for this episode. And last week, we started talking about taking responsibility for your health so that you can help others. We talked about how not taking care of our health can affect the people around us, and briefly, how it can affect our entire environment. We also talked about the idea of putting on your oxygen mask before you try to help others, because you need to take care of yourself in order to be able to be a help to other people. So this week I want to take that a step further and talk about those decisions and choices we have to make on a daily basis a little more deeply, because you really do have choices in your healthcare. And we've talked about this before on the show, especially if you're being the CEO of your own healthcare. When you see your provider and you talk about options for treatment or testing, whatever it is that you have going on, you truly have the right as a patient to choose from those treatment or testing options presented to you by your provider. And you also have the choice to decline treatment. There is no one right answer when it comes to your health. But that said, you do need to be informed about your decisions, whether or not you're deciding on a treatment or test that involves signing an actual informed consent document, such as a procedure or a surgery. And yes, you can decline testing or treatment, but you need to understand truly what that means for your future if you do decline that testing or treatment. And declining that may mean that you go without a diagnosis or your health may deteriorate without treatment. But that's not necessarily bad in the eyes of everyone. However, it will have an effect on your future. So you truly need to have all of the information to make that decision. But again, you have that right. It is your right to refuse care, to refuse treatment. But you do need to be informed about it. Why are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? And how are we going to move forward? You also have choices on a daily basis that will make or break your health. You choose what you're going to eat. You choose whether you're going to be active or sedentary. And you choose whether or not you will take time for you in the middle of a crazy world, for example. So as an adult, you choose all of these things. And sometimes we might miss the days when we were kids and somebody else dictated those choices for us, because there are so many choices to make on a regular basis. So we just passed Christmas. If you've seen the new Christmas movie, Red One, you might remember one of the sayings that Santa Claus always said. It's every day we choose who we want to be. Every decision, big or small, is an opportunity to be good. So every day we need to take a look at what we're doing and decide if it's a good thing or not. Are the actions we're taking helping us on the path to fulfill our goals, whether they be health, career, or family-oriented goals? Does what we say line up with what we do? When I see patients, I always talk about nutrition and exercise and sleep, and I always tell them that I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. Everything I tell my patients to do, I've done myself. I exercise as often as I can, I eat healthy most of the time, I try to prioritize sleep, because it's not just good advice for my patients, it's also good advice to follow in general. So I don't just make those statements blindly without anything backing them up. I've done the research. I've looked up what are good, healthy things to do beyond what I learned in school so that I have that informed decision myself to make regarding my own health. If you have a goal to improve your health, for example, you need to take steps to get there. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with no action on your part, and you can't expect your healthcare team to take the brunt of all of that work. There is a parable that I want to share with you on the other side of the break that will talk a little bit about this a little bit more in depth. And whether you are a religious person or not, I do want to share it because it helps to identify what this means for us on a regular basis. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to dig into this even further. But in the meantime, here we are on AM 950 Radio. Welcome back. Again, this is Recharging the Human Battery on AM 950 Radio. I am one of our hosts, nurse practitioner Mandi Dickey, filling in for today. We're talking about decisions and choices and all the things that we have to think about on a daily basis. So again, we kind of led into this a little bit last week, and I wanted to take it a little bit further. So again, when we're talking about all of these things that we want to do, these goals that we have, actions that we need to take to get to those goals, I mentioned before the break that it reminded me of a parable it's a parable of the drowning man. So again, bear with me whether you are religious or not, because I think it is very pertinent to hear these words. So here it is. A storm descends on a small town, and the downpour soon turns into a flood. As the waters rise, the local preacher kneels in prayer on the church porch, surrounded by water. By and by, one of the townsfolk comes up to the street in a canoe. "Better get in, preacher. The waters are rising fast." "No," says the preacher. "I have faith in the Lord. He will save me." Still the waters rise. Now the preacher is up on the balcony, wringing his hands in supplication, when another guy zips up in a motorboat. "Come on, preacher. We need to get you out of here. The levee's going to break any minute." Once again, the preacher is unmoved. "I shall remain. The Lord will see me through." After a while, the levee breaks, and the flood rushes over the church until only the steeple remains above water. The preacher is up there, clinging to the cross, when a helicopter descends out of the clouds, and a state trooper calls down to him through a megaphone, "Grab the ladder, preacher. This is your last chance." Once again, the preacher insists the Lord will deliver him. And predictably, he drowns. A pious man, the preacher goes to heaven. After a while, he gets an interview with God, and he asks the Almighty, "Lord, I had unwavering faith in you. Why didn't you deliver me from that flood?" God shakes his head. "What did you want from me? I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter." So I think of that parable in times where we ask for help, and then we need to take steps in order to get there. So the moral of this story is that, and how it relates to healthcare, is this. If you come to your healthcare provider's office and you're hoping to improve your health, you can have faith in your provider all you want, but you need to take action too. You can't say you're waiting for a sign and then ignore all the signs. And you have to meet your provider halfway. If we come up with a plan and you don't follow the plan once you leave my office, I cannot be held responsible for what you did or did not do in the meantime. I can advise, but I cannot eat, exercise, or sleep for you. I cannot take the medications for you, and I cannot stop smoking for you. It's like the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We can give all the advice that we want, but in the end, you as the patient have to take that power, you have to take that responsibility for your health and take the actions necessary. One of my most memorable times working a patient regarding smoking cessation, for example, was actually during my nurse practitioner clinical experiences years ago. I had a guy who wanted to stop smoking. He understood the health risks, but didn't think he could do it. We talked about his goals and what he actually wanted to get out of life. And he really loved fishing, and he had his eye on a fishing boat, but he didn't have the money to go buy it. So I sat down, I calculated how much he was spending on cigarettes, and I compared it with an estimate of a price of a new boat. We looked it up online, found one kind of like what he wanted, had the price in mind. And as it turned out, he would have the money to buy the boat in cash in somewhere around 6 months with how much he was spending on cigarettes. He was astonished. When I saw him in follow-up a few months later, he had actually quit smoking, but instead of buying that new boat that he planned on, he was putting money towards his credit cards to pay down the debts, and then he was going to save for the boat. So he had a plan for this. It was a life-changing experience for him, and it was a great learning experience for me. He had the choice to continue smoking or not, and he chose not to, when given the full information about what his decision was doing to his life. So sometimes people just don't know all of the information. That's where I talked about just a little bit ago about that informed consent. You also need to be informed about the choices you're making regarding your health, again, whether or not it's something that you have to sign a consent form for. So he made the choice to improve his life and to do good. Again, one of those choices, big or small, that you have on a daily basis to choose good. He chose good in that point. He quit smoking, he was improving his health, and he was also benefiting financially because he was no longer wasting that money on the cigarettes. He was paying off his credit card debt, and then he was planning to buy the boat that he had always wanted. Another choice we have daily is whether or not we exercise. I used to be a fitness coach for several years, and I worked with individuals on motivation and getting into a routine of exercise. I learned from that experience that motivation didn't always come before the routine was built. Sometimes the routine builds the motivation to continue, and it's not easy to start working out. And even if you've done it for a while and you kind of fall off of that exercise bandwagon, it's really not easy to restart exercise. That old adage, a body in motion stays at motion, a body at rest stays in rest, is very much true, because when you're thinking about trying to exercise, trying to get fit, it's really hard to get into that routine. After that first day or two, you get really sore, your muscles are really achy, and you really have to think about, is this something I truly want to continue? And I've seen a lot of memes and quotes on social media over the years about how doing one thing is hard and doing the other thing is also hard, so you have to choose your hard, right? So some of those things say staying married is hard, getting a divorce is hard, you have to choose your hard. Staying overweight is hard, and keeping up on exercise routine is hard. You have to choose your hard, meaning you have to choose which one is going to be hard but worth it in the end. So when you are making that decision on whether or not you're going to get into an exercise routine, you have to make that decision for what is actually going to be the hardest thing. Is it going to be staying in the same position that I'm in right now? Or is it going to be taking some steps to improve my health so that overall I'm a healthier person, I'm a happier person? And like we talked about last week, when you're healthier and you're happier, you're going to want to help other people around you to be healthy and happy also, which leads to, in general, a better environment. So the first thing to do if you choose to get into exercise is to find some kind of exercise that you will enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, surprise, surprise, you're not going to do it. It's not going to maintain. You're not going to be able to keep up that motivation to keep going, because it's going to be this thing. It's going to be a task that you have to do, and you're not going to enjoy doing it. For example, running isn't for everyone, but it is definitely therapy for me. I actually have a shirt that says, I run to burn off the crazy. And it's just kind of a running joke, haha, pun intended, because when you find that exercise, it is kind of an outlet. It's a stress relief. So not only are you improving your health by exercising, you're improving your health by relieving your stress. Exercise has long been thought of as the most underutilized antidepressant, and food the most underutilized medication as well. So exercise in general, it's a really good antidepressant. It's a really good anti-anxiety. It helps to control your mood. So I do recommend that everybody do it. But again, you have to find out that one that's for you. Again, running isn't for everyone. HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, is not for everyone. Sometimes it's just too intense. Sometimes it's too time consuming. Some of the workouts that you can do are up to 45 minutes, which is great. And we do recommend 30 minutes of exercise a day, most days of the week. Do you have to do all 30 minutes at one time? No. You can do 3 10-minute sessions if that works out better for you, just as long as you get that time in that workout. One other thing with that is that when you are running or walking, I always tell people you need to be going fast enough that it's difficult to have a conversation while you're doing that activity. I had some patients come in and they say, well, I walk all the time. I take my little dog for a walk, but it's this little teeny tiny 2-pound puppy dog that can't go very fast. So as you're walking, the dog is stopping and sniffing everything around them. And you're not actually getting a whole lot of cardiac workout from that because your heart's not beating fast enough. If you can have a really good conversation while you're out there for that walk, chances are you're not getting the good cardiovascular benefits that you need because your heart is not beating hard enough. So, side note on that one. Another thing that might not be for everyone is heavy weightlifting. I do, however, recommend some sort of weightlifting for everyone because it is good for bone density. You can choose how you do it, whether you choose heavy or light or more frequent. But again, a couple days a week, I would recommend throwing in some weights to work on bone density and just help to support those bones. For some people, their choice of exercise is dancing. For some, it's swimming or water aerobics. For some, just the walking that we talked about. Whatever type of activity you might like, That's what you need to do because that's what you're going to be consistent with. Again, you have to like what you're doing, you have to enjoy it, or you're not going to do it. Once you've made that decision on what kind of activity you're going to do, you need to choose to prioritize it over other things like sitting on the couch scrolling through social media. Most of us spend entirely too much time doing that while still saying that we don't have time to do other things. It's a choice. We choose to scroll through social media. We can choose to do something physical instead. Years ago, my family bought a Nintendo Wii. This is not an advertisement for the Wii. However, when we were playing it, you have to actually get up and move. So when we were doing the sports games on there, we literally had to get up and move around the room and jump around. And that was the only kind of video game I said I ever wanted in my house because my children had to be active while they were playing it. And it was something we could do on a cold, rainy day that we couldn't go outside. We could still stay active. So find something active that you can do on a regular basis. Even again, if we're thinking about video games because everybody's on them all the time, the VR headsets have some amazing things that get you moving too. They have some boxing workouts on there. Again, running, aerobic type of workouts. You can work up a really good sweat on those things. So I'm not going to diss on video games because some of them can get you up and moving. Fortnite, however, is not. You're going to sit there and not get a lot of calories burned unless you're just talking about the yelling at the computer screen. So beyond that, there are some video games that can actually be helpful for you. So those are okay. I'm going to put them in the okay bucket. My personal big thing, if you listen to any of the episodes that I do on my own, my big thing is brain health. I've been in neurology for 24 years to some extent. And I have told my patients on many occasions, after learning this from a colleague early on in my practice, that you need to keep yourself active in 3 ways in order to keep your brain functioning at top level. Those 3 ways are physically, mentally, and socially. The physical part means physical activity most days of the week, 30 minutes total per day, as I mentioned. Mentally means doing things like reading, doing crossword puzzles, learning a new hobby or skill or language. And socially, again, doesn't mean scrolling on social media. It means keeping up on what's going on in your neighborhood, in your state, your nation, whether that means watching the news, with the caveat that not the 24-hour news channel that's on all the time. I don't want you watching news 24 hours a day just to be active. Watch it periodically. Keep up on the current news, what's happening in the world, in the nation, or reading in the newspaper. You know, not a lot of us get it in paper form anymore, but reading the newspaper, keeping up on, again, social activity, local events, national events, what's going on. Attend community events so that you have to interact with other people. And I know that sometimes that sounds scary, interacting with other people. In post-COVID world, some people still don't want to go out and be active, but I do still encourage you to get out and be social and see other people. Sometimes it might just be connecting with your friends and family and keeping up on their lives. All of these things help to keep your brain active in different ways. It keeps those brain cells active and alive. It keeps them working appropriately. It keeps your memory going. Having to remember what's going on in your friends' and family's lives is good for your memory because it builds up those brain cells. It builds those memory cells. If you don't have to remember what's going on in other people's lives, it doesn't keep your brain active in that way that it really needs to. So all of those ways, social, physical, mental, again, all those 3 ways to help your brain to stay active. Again, that's my little soapbox that I absolutely love. All of these are things that are important to do. Again, you need to make the decision to do them. I can't do that for you. I can encourage you, but I can't do the activity for you. On the flip side, I do want to take a moment to talk about how you can get too much of a good thing. There are limitations, and we need to make some of those decisions to follow those limitations as well, especially if you are a person with an addictive personality. So not just talking about addiction to things like drugs and alcohol. People can get addicted to watching social media, to scrolling on their phone, to spending time on their phone. People can drink too much water. It's not most of us. Most of us don't drink enough water, but it is possible to drink too much water and put yourself in a detrimental medical state. You can exercise too much or too hard also. We also already know that it's possible to eat too much. That shows up with obesity. Though I will put a caveat in there also that you can also be overweight and obese and eat too little. Sometimes you are actually putting your body into starvation mode by eating too little on a consistent basis, and then your body holds on to every calorie that you take in. So you actually won't continue to lose weight because you're not getting in enough calories. Your body needs those calories to function appropriately. And if it doesn't know when it's going to get its next meal, it's going to hold on to those calories. That's kind of how we were initially. If you think back to when we all started out, we didn't know when that next meal was going to come. So our ancestors held on to those calories because they didn't know when that next meal was coming. If you're putting yourself into starvation mode and you're eating infrequently, or you have very little calorie intake on a regular basis, that's also going to be a bad thing for your metabolism and whether or not your body is going to burn those calories appropriately. So you can be overweight and either be overeating or undereating. So there are times that it's important for you to monitor your caloric intake to figure out which one of those scenarios is actually the problem. And I say there are times rather than doing it all the time because, again, this is something that people can be obsessed with. They can become addicted to that calorie count, and that can cause issues socially, mentally, whatever the case may be. People can become obsessed with healthy eating and exercise to the detriment of their family relationships, meaning they won't go out to eat. They won't eat at another person's house. They always have to monitor and maintain knowledge of every single calorie that goes into their body, or they start over-exercising and, again, not getting together with friends or family because they have to exercise. Now, if you're training for a marathon and you're on a training plan, sure, I get that. But if you're just doing it on a regular basis, on an everyday basis, you are actually over-exercising, that can lead to breakdown of your muscles, which can lead to kidney injury. There's a lot of medical things that go along with that. So you can get too much of a good thing. While we always talk about everybody needs exercise, you have to be cautious with that, and you have to find that fine line between when it's good for you and when it's not good for you. When we talk about treating different ailments, you can also do too much in terms of treatments in general. I met with a client recently who was doing physical therapy, chiropractic treatments, rolfing, red light, laser, meeting with a personal trainer, doing a mold detox, massage therapy, acupuncture. And I feel like there's something else that I didn't write down on my notes here for today, but I still feel like I was forgetting something else. But she was doing all of these things and wondering why she wasn't getting better. If you do too much, it actually overwhelms your system and it may actually prevent you from improving. So this particular client wasn't improving. She was always run down. She was always feeling unwell. She was always out of energy. And she always felt like she was trying to recover from something because she was doing all of these really intense healthcare treatments. So in our clinic, we backed off on some of her treatments a little bit. She slowed down on some of her other treatments and how frequently she was doing some of her other treatments. And lo and behold, she actually started seeing improvement in her health again. Because, again, as we talked about just a minute ago, you can do too much of a good thing. So she was overdoing all of these different treatments. And while we talk about, yes, it's good to have multiple tools in your toolbox, layering treatment is really good. But when you layer it to the point where you are a full-time patient because every day is full of appointments and you never give yourself time to rest, you never give your body an opportunity to rest, you will be overworking your system and you're not going to get better. You're actually going to see things go backwards and you're going to feel less healthy because you have overdone it on your health. You can do some of those treatments too often. So photobiomodulation is one of the things that we do at Hypercharge. Red light therapy is the other word for this. Again, we always talk about now that it's not just red light therapy because we do red and near infrared, and we also have green light therapy. There are so many different types of therapy within that photobiomodulation. And it's growing in popularity. You could find it all over in various settings. Sometimes it's a red light panel. Sometimes it's a bed. Whatever the case may be, there are a lot of different kinds of machines. And not all of those red light machines are created equal. So some of those lower powered red light machines, the panels, for example, they can be used every day. And even some of the beds with a lower power can be used every day. But when you get into the higher powered beds, you actually want to limit those treatments typically to no more than 3 times a week. Again, you can do too much of a good thing. You can overdo it with photobiomodulation. You can do too much, and that's actually going to cause you to feel fatigued and run down. It's going to be the exact opposite of what you were hoping for when you went into this photobiomodulation treatment. It will prevent you from improving. It's going to put more stress on your system. And the whole point of that photobiomodulation treatment, that red light treatment, is to treat the stress that's happening in your body. So when you're causing stress by doing it too much, you're defeating the purpose of what you went in to do just because you're over-treating. So it is something that you have to be cautious about. And whether we underdo something or overdo something, again, those are choices. The whole conversation today is about choices and our decisions that we have to make for the good of our health. Again, choices every day, no matter how big or small, are an opportunity to do good. And I'm not just doing good like getting on that nice list that Santa has. It's doing good for your health, doing good for your family, doing good for your community, the world around you. Relating that back to our conversation from last week, we need to take personal responsibility for the decisions that we make. If we decide not to do the exercises our physical therapist prescribed for us, for example, we need to own up to it and let our physical therapist know that we didn't do the exercises so that they can help us best in our treatment process. If we say that we did the exercises and we didn't really, the therapist might change up the treatment plan unnecessarily when you didn't actually do the work to get there, and that's why things aren't changing this week or in the last couple of weeks, whenever your last appointment was. So they need to make sure that they know the full picture. And it's okay, life gets in the way sometimes, but you can't always use life as an excuse for those either. You have to take responsibility and prioritize those exercises that were prescribed to you. That's a treatment plan, and it's hopefully helping you prevent having a bigger injury happen. It's kind of like that whole idea of taking your car in for routine maintenance before something breaks down. If you're doing your physical therapy to try to help heal whatever ailment that you have, it's trying to help you prevent from breaking down further. So you need to do those treatments. And again, taking that responsibility for it, making that decision to make that a priority, get those exercises in. And then earlier in the show, I talked about the idea of meeting your provider halfway. And I know you've heard this before, but if you continue to do things the same way and expect different results, that is literally the definition of insanity. You cannot keep doing the same thing and expect different results. So if you want to see change, you need to change what you're doing to get different results. You have multiple opportunities every day to make those decisions that has the opportunity to do good for your health and for the health of others, as I've mentioned. So here we are in the first few days of 2025. Has that set in for you yet? Have you had to write down the date on anything? I had to write it the other day, and I caught myself still writing 2024 because I'm not used to it. We're literally 3 days into the new year, and I already can't remember that it's the new year. But we have more choices to make when it comes to this time of year specifically. So many people set resolutions. Have you set a resolution for this year? Whether it is to lose weight, to exercise more, give up sugar, enjoy more time with your family, whatever that resolution may be, people set resolutions and then all too quickly forget them. I heard someone joke once about creating a fitness place called Resolutions. It's only open in the month of January, and it's closed the rest of the year because nobody goes to work out the rest of the year. Those resolutions end at the end of January, and that is it for that decision. I personally made a resolution years ago to not make any more resolutions, and that's the one I've kept because instead of setting resolutions, I set goals for myself. You can set goals for yourself anytime. It's not just a New Year activity. You can literally say any day, I'm going to make a goal to do X, Y, or Z. So I set goals knowing that some of those goals will be easily reached. I can easily get to them. I make a goal to keep my bedroom clean on a regular basis. That's a pretty easy goal. That's something that I can do. It's just something that becomes a daily task. I also set goals for myself that would be considered stretch goals. And if you've not heard this term before, for a stretch goal, you have to actually get outside of your comfort zone a little, and you have to work to reach them. That stretch goal means that you have to stretch yourself because you're not going to reach that goal without putting in the work. Those goals don't reach themselves. As we talked about earlier, if you set the goals, you need to take steps to reach them. So those stretch goals are something that it might happen, but it's going to take work to get there. I set a goal for myself a couple of years ago that I wanted to run my first marathon. I've run 13 half marathons. That's not a problem. Running that full marathon is a stretch because it's twice as far as I've gone before. It's a lot of training commitment. It's a lot of time. It is a lot of time away from my family if they're not going to come with me. But they did offer a lot of times to at least ride their bikes with me. So the kids could still be with me on those times when I was doing my long runs. But when you're going for that really long stretch goal, there's a lot of commitment that has to be made. You need to think of all of the steps that need to get you there. And it's not going to be something, again, that's going to reach itself. You have to do the work to get there. When I was planning out that marathon training, I literally had to research what's the best way to train for a marathon. I looked at all the different training plans, tried to figure out which one was going to be most cohesive with the busy life that I lead. And then I had to write it out on a calendar so that I could actually see what it looks like. Most training plans when you're training for a marathon, and I'm not expecting all of you to go out and train for a marathon now. This is not something that you should take lightly in this decision, but most of those marathon training programs recommend that you do a half marathon somewhere in the middle as your race run, because most of your training runs are not going to be run at race pace. But you do need to get at least a couple of those races in there so you're running at race pace and you can see how you're doing. So then you have to look at the calendar and see, is there a half marathon somewhere that I can register for that right around that training time? Again, it takes planning. You have to look at that. You have to consider those things. And then considering what days am I going to run? What days is it going to be most cohesive for my family for me to get my long runs in, to get my shorter runs in? How's it going to work with everything else? Now, with my brain injury recovery, I still have doctor's appointments. How is it going to work getting my training runs in on days that I have to work or days that I have my doctor's appointments? There's a lot of thinking and a lot of planning that goes into place for that stretch goal. It's not the goal of keeping my room clean because that doesn't take a lot of resources. I just go in and I clean up my room, right? And if you do it on a regular basis, it's not going to take a lot longer. A hint to any teenagers that might be listening to the show. If you keep up on it, it won't take as long. So again, when you think about that stretch goal, you need to consider all the things that are going to be required to get you there. How long do you anticipate it's going to take to reach your goal? If you have a goal to run a marathon, you have a date. So you have that half marathon that you registered for. That's your goal to get there. And then I recommend working backwards to try to figure out your time frame of when you need to get other steps done. So whatever your goal, whether it's to run a marathon or to do a house project or to do something else, you need to figure out what all needs to be done and when it needs to be done. So how long is it going to take to reach that goal? If it's a weight loss goal, by what date do you need to make this goal? So I taught nursing school for several years, and one of the things we talked about with our nursing students all the time was setting SMART goals. And I've heard other people use this terminology as well. Setting a SMART goal stands for, the S is specific, so you need to make a specific goal. It needs to be measurable. The M is measurable, meaning how can you tell that you actually met the goal? Running a marathon, you would measure it by your miles, but is it measurable? Can you actually get there? A is achievable. Can you actually achieve this goal? And when we make stretch goals, we make them intentionally so that it is going to go outside of our comfort zone. It's going to take more work. But does that mean that they're not achievable? No. Sometimes if you make the goal that I'm going to be a billionaire in a year, that might not be as achievable as some of those other goals, depending on who you are. But that might not be as achievable if you're someone who makes $5, $6 an hour right now. So that might be a little bit more than you can, might be taking off a bigger bite than you can chew right now. R is reasonable, kind of goes along with the achievable part. And T is your timeline. So when does this need to be done? So I just talked about thinking about how long it's going to take to reach that goal, but that's your T, that's your timeline. So that's your SMART goal. And you can use that for any goal that you have to make. But you need to figure out, is it something that's specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, or relatable for that one, and your timeline. You need to have all of those things when you set that goal. Other things you need to think about when you think about how to reach that goal is, do you need any equipment? Do you need help from anybody else? Are there any financial investments? If you're starting a business, if you are starting a new venture, if you are planning for weight loss, some of the weight loss programs take financial investment as well. So are there financial investments included in this? There is an old saying that if you fail to prepare, then you are preparing to fail. So if you haven't put in the preparation, if you haven't thought about all the steps that need to be taken to get your goal, it's going to be harder to reach that goal. So failure is going to be more likely in that instance. So you do need to think about all these different steps that are required to get you to that goal. There's also, however, another saying that failure, if you break down the word, is just a first attempt in learning. So a word for each letter in the word fail. So yes, if you fail to prepare, then you're preparing to fail. But again, failing is just a first attempt in learning. So it depends on how much this goal means to you. Do you want to fail? Do you want to succeed at it? That's going to be a choice that you have to make. What in this is telling you that you want to get to that goal? How much are you going to work to get to that goal? How much are you going to stick to those decisions that you made? You made the decision to set that goal. You made the decision to take the steps to get there. Can you make the decision to actually follow through? So goals tend not to reach themselves. You need to put in the work. Whether it's a little work or a lot of work will depend on the loftiness of that goal. And whether you reach it or not will depend a lot on the decisions that you make. Again, are those decisions matching up with the actions that you need that are necessary to meet that goal? If you want to get into an exercise plan and you're still sitting on your phone scrolling social media, are you actually doing the activities that are mirroring what you need to do to get to that goal? If you, like I just was talking about, if you plan to run a 5K, you have to train. You can't just expect to go out and run it on race day and have it go as well as you'd hoped for if you didn't train. Now, for some people, sure, you can go out and run a race, no problem. When I first started doing 5Ks, my oldest son was like 9 or 10 years old. That kid went out and ran a 5K with me, no problem, finished it in 18 minutes. But he was a kid, and he had no health conditions. And I was in my 30s, and I wasn't exactly in tip-top shape. So if I would have tried to go run that 5K, that 3.125 miles, if I would have tried to go run that without training, it would not have ended well for me. So again, if you didn't go out and train, you can't expect the results that you want on race day for that 5K, for example. If your goal is to advance your career, you might need to get additional training. You might need another certification. And you definitely need to update your resume and actually look for and apply for jobs. The jobs are not going to fall in your lap. Every once in a while they do. Sometimes people reach out and they want that, but they're not typically just going to fall on your lap with that. If your goal is to finish your degree, you need to complete the coursework. I think you kind of get what I'm saying. If you have those goals, you need to take the steps to get there. We will talk about this more on the other side of the break, but I want you to start thinking about these things. What's your goal? What is it that you want to work on for this year? Not making a resolution, setting a goal. What is it that you're going to reach? So again, recharging the human battery here on AM 950 radio. I will see you on the other side of the break. today after our last break here on AM 950 Radio with Recharging the Human Battery. Again, Dr. Sinacropi's out today. It's just me, Mandi, talking about decisions today. All the decisions that we can make on a daily basis to be good for our health, to be good for our family, our society in general. And we were talking a bit before the break about setting goals and choosing those goals, choosing the activities that we need to get to those goals. And as I was mentioning, this is not just, while it is New Year's time, we are 3 years into the new year. This is the time when everybody is setting their resolutions for the year. This is not the only time of the year that you can make these decisions. Again, make that goal anytime you feel you need to make it. When I was working as a fitness coach, the company that I worked for, our new workout programs always started on a Monday. The workout calendar always started on a Monday. But then we started saying, why wait until Monday? Go ahead and start it now. So when you make that decision, don't just wait until the next convenient time, because there's never going to be a convenient time. People around the holidays start thinking about, well, I want to make a change. I want to be more healthy, but I'm going to wait until after Thanksgiving. I'm going to wait until after Christmas. I'm going to wait until after New Year's, because those times tend to be revolving around food. And they wanted to be able to enjoy those foods, so wanted to wait until after those holidays to get a start on that goal. Don't wait for that holiday to be done. Don't wait for the next thing to come along, because if you wait until after New Year's, well, Valentine's Day is going to be in February, and there's going to be a lot of candy and chocolates there, so maybe I'll wait until after that one. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Just make the goal for your health now. And again, goal doesn't have to be just health related, but if we're looking at that one specifically, just make the goal and set it and make those decisions now. Don't wait until that next big thing or make an excuse for why you have to wait for something else to happen. The other thing about setting goals is following through on them. So again, those resolutions, I kind of joked about that resolutions gym where things trail off at the end of January and the gym doesn't need to be open after January because nobody's going to go. But that would be a great time to kind of reevaluate your goals. So I want to share with you something that I learned in nursing school 20-some years ago. We learned about something called ADPI, and I think other schools have taught it in different variations of the words in slightly different versions. But ADPI stood for Assess, Diagnose, Plan, Implement, and Evaluate. That's how we came up with care plans for our patients. We learned about it in school. I taught it when I taught nursing school. When we go through these, again, we come up with ideas for how to help somebody with a care plan to improve their health. On assessment, when you're doing an assessment, that just means you're looking at things. You are taking in the full picture. You're getting all of the information. So when you're assessing your health, you're looking at how healthy are you? What's your weight? What should it be? How's your fitness level? What can you do on a daily basis? Are you having any limitations with the activities that you need to do on a daily basis? We call those ADLs, activities of daily living. So you make an assessment. You make a diagnosis from that. Yes, we typically think of diagnoses as medical diagnoses, but you make a diagnosis such as sedentary lifestyle or overweight or unhappy. Those can be your diagnoses. It doesn't have to be a medical diagnosis for this. And then you make a plan. That plan is your goal. That's your SMART goal. That's what you've made your decisions from, is that plan based on your assessment and diagnosis of your current health situation or your career situation, family situation, whatever it is related to that goal. And then you implement. So you implement the plan that you made it, whether it was a plan to run a marathon, whether it was a plan to further your degree or your career. You implement that plan, and then the last step is evaluate. You need to evaluate because you need to see, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing to get to that goal? How am I doing? That's a check-in for yourself. So marathon training, you're checking in periodically during that training process. How am I doing? Am I getting to where I need to be? With your weight loss program, you monitor it and you check on it. If you are in an actual weight loss program, they're having you come in and you're weighing yourself on a regular basis. Those are your check-ins. Those are your evaluations. How are you doing toward that goal? So you assess, you diagnose this, you plan, you implement that plan, you evaluate it. All of these things will help you be a healthier, better you. And we have so many more topics to talk about here in 2025. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.